Hello and welcome to the Daily Atheist. It is Friday. We made it to Friday. I'm all wound up. I'm ready for the weekend. We made it to Friday through the week. I hope you had a wonderful week. It is the 5th of June, 2020, and I have got my co-host today. Miss Cindy Plaza is joining me this morning. Good morning, Cindy. How are you doing?
Hi, Chris. I'm doing very, very good. Unlike the weather here, but yeah, I'm good and happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation again.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Cindy is a French atheist living in Belgium, and she's an IT consultant, and hopefully she's going to be teaching some critical thinking skills soon. So I've also got guests, Mélissa and Randolf Richardson. You guys are familiar with Randolph. Good morning, Mélissa and Randolph. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you. Well, for us, it's already 3 o'clock, not really morning, but
yeah, it's habit. Just habit. You'll have to pardon me. I will do it again. It's just Randolph. So how are you doing, buddy?
Oh, good. It's you're helping me get my sleep schedule back in where it should be because I was turning night into day with my IT work recently. So it's 0600 here now. So in the morning. So it's really nice to be up early and getting my schedule back in order for the weekend.
Yeah, as Neil likes to call it, stupid early. That's what he.
Oh, he gets up 3 or 4 in the morning each day. Yeah,
I know, and he calls me stupid early, right? Anyway, so it's wonderful to have you all with me today. We are going to be talking about discussing some critical thinking education with Cindy and Mélissa. That's what I believe your specialties are, and Randolph was fascinated whenever we talked about the subject, and he asked if he could be on the show and visit with them. I thought, great, I'll just sit back and watch. Good morning, folks. So, Cindy, do you want to kick it off and introduce us and tell us about what your upcoming course is?
Yeah. So, Mélissa and I are working on a course that we would like to teach through a public company. It's not a government company, as you said yesterday. It's just a regular public company. So our goal is to finish our course, which is very, very close to be done, and then try to put it on their catalog and see how it goes. And if that doesn't work, well, we'll find another way. But yeah, the course is almost done, and like I just said, we didn't write anything new. Mm-hmm. Some things are contradictory to some popular ideas right now, but mostly it's just putting together what everything says and everything knows, and deliver it in a constructive and coherent way.
Well, you know, one of the things we discussed last time whenever you were on the show was the tie-in between critical thinking. One of your motivations for going into critical thinking is because of your understanding or belief that if people were taught proper critical thinking when they were young, then that would help people avoid the snare of religion. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, that's exactly it. And not only religion, but pretty much all irrational thinking, whether it's pseudoscience, conspirationism, anti-vax, flat earthers, all that I think is just different manifestations of the lack of critical thinking. Also, same thing applies to discriminations. Every single discrimination has bad information at its core, and if you destroy the information itself, then the discrimination goes away.
That's
my ultimate goal. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And how does Miss Mélissa? Let me switch to you for just a moment. What part do you play in all this?
Well, I had the great opportunity to meet Cindy a couple of years ago because we were working in the same company. And during different conversations we found out we had a lot of shared opinions about critical thinking and stuff. And she talked me about her project to start writing a course around critical thinking, cognitive biases, and so on. And so I decided to support her in this initiative, because I fully agree with what she just said previously, that we should get educated to critical thinking at school way more than what we are now.
Okay, absolutely. Let me ask you, the tricky question: are you also an atheist?
Of course.
Oh, okay. Just checking. You know, I dare say that you can be a theist of a fashion or any fashion and still embrace critical thinking. You know, and something else.
Correct.
There's something else I had a thought of. Then this occurred to me as Miss Cindy was introducing her course. You can teach someone critical thinking. You can't make them apply it. Now, I do appreciate that the notion of, I lost you. There you are. You know what I mean? You can't have somebody apply it. One of the things you said was about biases, and I understand the biases. That's, you know, if you've got somebody and they're a racial bias or something like that, the notion is that they just don't understand. And if they understood and they applied critical thinking, they wouldn't think that way. I love it. I love how it applies. It starts at the base, and whether it's religion or racial things and all that. So that's great. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that that person who goes, you know what, I'm going to apply this critical thinking to this religion I believe. Wow, this is craziness. I can't believe this is crazy. Damn those black people. Damn the, you know, there's no guarantee they will turn and apply it to every aspect of their thinking.
I think what you're touching on is the attitudinal component of critical thinking. The way I see it, there's two major aspects of it. One is, of course, the skill set, where people can apply it and identify fallacies and use the logic and what else. But then there's the attitude, which is a different aspect of it, which is probably even a little bit more important. It's the attitude that people are willing to change their minds and willing to apply it to their own ideas, and willing to embrace doubt as an ally, as I try to do. I don't profess perfection at it by any stretch of the imagination, which is what makes it even more interesting, because there's still always something new to learn.
Of course.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Randolph. There's a scientist in Canada. His name is Boisvert, Robert Boisvert. He identified 14 attitudes and 12 skills. And he described them very thoroughly, and we introduced this at the beginning of the course. So yeah, it's a very interesting remark, because you can we emphasize on the two different components, tools and know-hows. The tools, you need to know when and in what area each tool is relevant, but the know-how, you know, you have to learn them and apply them yourself. Nobody can do it for you.
Yeah, we've been teaching. My wife and I have taught our kids right from a very early age to doubt things, to embrace the idea of saying that they don't know something instead of what a lot of other people do. And I find just honestly saying I don't know something is quite liberating. And I find when people say the whole idea, which I notice seems to come very often from religion, which attempts to answer everything, that doubt and not knowing things is a bad thing. I really don't think it is. I think, and they'll say things, they'll try to taint the idea about these things, that it somehow is bad for our self-confidence. And I've noticed quite the opposite is true. And I think because the authenticity, the honesty with it is why it works so well. I didn't get to introduce myself, but that's okay. We can do that later.
Yeah, you know,
go ahead.
You know, I'm just a discombobulated kind of person. I forgot to introduce Randall properly. You know, I just kind of touched on it. I also forgot to say hi to the chat. So, Randolph, go ahead and do your thing, and then I'll say hi to the chat.
Okay, I'm Randolf Richardson. I'm the founding president of an organization in Canada here called the Canadian Atheists. Our logo is just behind me there, and our flag, our national flag. I like to show them off, but that's just makes it easier for people to know, hey, there's the guy from Canada. We're promoting, we're trying to normalize atheism in society in a manner of that where religious people will very often say that they believe in a deity and really not get any kind of significant reaction on it. We want atheists to enjoy the same privilege, where when somebody says, I don't believe in deities, they're not ostracized for it. We're also trying to be a voice to counter the vilification of atheism and atheists, because we're promoting the idea of atheism in its fundamental best as just the absence of belief in deities, not any particular position, but more of just a classification. So freedom being an important part of this, obviously. So fortunately, we have the law on our side here in Canada where people are, it's protected as a fundamental right that people have the freedom to associate or not associate, to believe or not believe, and the freedom of expression, thoughts, opinion, etc. And there's also a section of our charter that says that it's illegal to discriminate based on these kinds of characteristics. So our hope is that this spreads throughout the world and becomes the de facto standard globally. It's but at least in Canada, we don't have too big of a problem with it, but it is something that it still exists. And, you know, we even had Trinity Western University a few years ago was forcing law school students to, because it's a law teaching university, which is not all that common here in Canada. We have a limited number of them. And they were forcing people with a covenant to follow certain Christian values and discriminate against people based on sexual orientation and whatnot. And it got disputed all the way up to the Supreme Court level. And our judges sided with our rights and freedoms, which are in our Constitution. So they basically lost. I did challenge their university professors to a public debate on the matter and never heard back from them. So I assumed that they were busy. But the fight goes on because they're still discriminating, just not law students. So they're being a bit of cherry pickers in this. So we carry on. So, but yeah, so critical thinking is something that's very important, and one of the I find one of the problems, one of the misconceptions about atheists is that all atheists need to be critical thinkers. And there are many atheists who aren't. And there are people who will have bad reasons for choosing to think a certain way or not think a certain way, and people with good reasons or no reason at all. And so it's a separate characteristic, but it is one that's not uncommon among atheists, I've noticed.
You know, I have a question for you real quick, Miss Cindy, about your course. When, if you don't mind, would you remind me when it's going to be available? If it's going to be available, what kind of time frame? 6 months, 9 months?
I depends what you mean by available.
Okay.
Because we don't plan to put it online right now, because if we go through this public company, we won't have the right to disclose it. Like the way we're going to teach it with this company. So I don't know. It will depend. We'll decide everything after we met this company. Before we can make any plan, because all will depend on this.
Okay. Well, then in that case, do you have any recommended reading or study suggestions for people who'd like to learn more about the critical thinking and teaching it?
I would suggest Kahneman. He wrote a couple of books, very interesting, including one with two speeds of thoughts. I don't remember the title right about now. I recommend. There are a lot of websites on this in both French and English, but much more in English. I also used this one. I don't know if you see it properly.
By Patrick.
Logic by Patrick J. Hurley. Okay.
Yeah. This one was recommended by Matt Delahanty, and I followed his advice, and it was a very, very good advice because it's a very good book, very, very precise, very, very thorough. What else? Mélissa, do you have?
No, actually, I have more references in French literature, so it's not going to be very helpful.
You mentioned earlier one Canadian scholar here who had outlined the different types of attitudes and skills in critical thinking. What was his name? How do you spell that?
It's like Greenwood translated in French.
Okay.
Just give me a second. I will give you his first name.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, that sounded very interesting. You mentioned that he outlined so many more different attitudinal components and skill components, and it sounded like it was quite thorough from the way you were describing it.
Yeah, he based his work on Ennis. Again, I don't remember his first name, but he searched a lot on critical thinking in the 70s. Yeah, Jacques Poivert. He's a searcher in teaching. That's his specialty, and he's well versed in teaching critical thinking.
How do you spell his name?
Jacques, Jacqueus.
And last name?
Boisvert.
B-E-R-T, right?
Yeah. V.
Okay. Oh, V. Okay.
Yeah, V.
Yeah, I'm going to look into him. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Your course, are you planning to sell this course, or is it going to be something made available for free? I'm not sure what the structure there will be.
We don't know. We started discussing it with Mélissa, but we didn't figure out yet. We want to finish it first and then go through the process of putting in on the catalog of the public company, and then we will see. Maybe we're going to do some videos to present it. Maybe, I don't know. We haven't decided anything yet. Mélissa, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. It's not an initiative where we are looking for any profit. It's something we are going to do during our free time, besides our job. And yeah, I think when you give classes through the company Cindy mentioned, you get paid for the hours of classes, and the goal of the course is mainly to give a toolbox to the people we will be able to meet through this course, more than giving an online extra literature, because there are already so many existing literature online on the topic of critical thinking. Our goal is to give a toolbox to people and give some hands-on tools to develop some critical thinking about your own beliefs and stuff.
Can I ask you, is this course geared towards adults or children, or what's the age range for your?
Right now it's for adults.
Okay. Well, yeah, just because it seems to me, call me crazy, but it sure seems to me like the childhood age would be ideal for some critical thinking training. Now, not only how to do it, but again, as we discussed earlier, when to actually employ it. So that'd be nice if it was, if there was something designed specifically for kids. There may be something out there all day long. I just don't know about it.
You could also consider developing different course material for different age ranges too.
Yeah, that's the goal. But we chose to teach adults because it was more easily achievable here in Belgium. We can propose the course for adults, and we have a good chance of it to be accepted. And On the other hand, if you want to teach in primary schools, which would be the ideal, the process is much more complicated. So that's why we went for the easy course first, and then see what we can do to improve it.
You should take a look at the curriculum here in British Columbia then, because there have, in the last decade or so, gradually adding critical thinking components to the course material here. And, I would like to see it as a separate course altogether that includes some philosophy and critical thinking together, because I think they go very well together. There's logic mixed in there. And I believe it should start at kindergarten, and there should be, it doesn't have to be a major course, but if it's just a minor course, that would be a very important thing. And we've got that in our public system here. So this might be one area to take a look at as well that you might find helpful. And especially if you want to argue to your government there in Belgium, you can say, hey, look, see what they're doing in British Columbia, Canada. It's a provincial mandate here. And I think some of the other provinces are looking at doing it too. And the goal is not to get people out of religion or anything. So there's no anti-theistic intentions in there. It's more just to help people to think more clearly. And I think critical thinking is a very important thing for helping people to protect themselves from scams as well, like pyramid schemes and other ridiculous things that people do that try to rip people off. So it helps help people to protect themselves from dishonesty.
I would say that teaching critical thinking in primary or secondary schools is a bit touchy, because in Belgium, I don't know how it is in Canada, but in Belgium, until recently, you had a big influence of the Catholic pillar. They have quite an important monopoly on education, and it's only since the 80s that we started giving the opportunity to children to have philosophy classes, for instance, instead of religion classes. So it's something that is now progressively changing, but many schools in Belgium are still have a Catholic program, and it's not that easy to propose a course around a topic such as rational thinking.
As far as it goes, I think what I've seen compared to other forms of Christianity, the Catholics seem to be a little bit more open to this sort of thing. But I agree, there's still a problem there. And, here in Canada, and like a lot of other countries, with the sexual abuse epidemic in the Catholic Church, and I call it an epidemic because of how widespread and common it is, a lot of people have left all kinds of different forms of Christianity, not just Catholicism, but I think Catholicism's probably seen the largest depletion in numbers. There's been a lot of people who've moved away from it. They're disgusted with it, and they've just completely decided no more of this. And so I guess when they're teaching philosophy at these Catholic influenced schools, do you find that they have a tendency to conflate it with religion? Philosophy and religion, they conflate them together? To mix them up? To confuse the two?
Yeah, there is sometimes a bit of a confusion, because when I went to a Catholic school, and sometimes you feel like, okay, science and philosophy are just beliefs like any other, and for me that analysis was not correct. It's you have to separate beliefs and science, and I think sometimes the separation between both is not made very clear in our education.
That's an important distinction, because science is an analytical tool. It's a very important one that is impartial to beliefs, and I think a lot of the religious people are very intimidated by this, and they try very hard to keep the confusion, because it helps them to mask their insecurity on the matter. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Well, what I was going to ask is, with one of the things, usually when the first time somebody's on my show, I give them a better introduction and I tell people about who you are. And then oftentimes we'll go through your deconversion story the first time, but I don't do that every time, because if I did that every time, we'd never get through a show. We'd have to go through Randolph's. That's one of the things about Randolph's deal. I didn't give him a proper introduction because he's been on the show before. All my people know him. Cindy, I just gave her a brief one because but they don't know you. They've never seen you, Miss Mélissa. So if you don't mind, I would like to ask you briefly, because the people, our regulars, have already seen Randolph's and Cindy Plaza's story about how they came to their atheism and their activism in atheism. But if you don't mind...
I'll just clarify, I've always been an atheist. It wasn't something I came to.
Thank you. If you don't mind, would you go ahead and tell us briefly how you... Now, I say briefly because we do have Neil, the 604 atheist. His whole bag is these deconversion stories. He loves them. He would probably love to have you on his show and have you tell your deconversion story. And then after that, they would have another show where they have an after party and people talk to you. Just people come on and pop and visit. It's a wonderful experience. So Neil would probably... But if you have a shortened version...
Yeah. So I have never been really attracted by religious beliefs. It's been pretty clear to me since I was a kid that I did not identify myself to all these stories about God and Jesus and so on. I remember it was very funny because we had when I was like 10 years old, something like that, you have the first celebration, the première communion, we say in French. And it's like, you go to church, you have a nice white dress. And I remember I just wanted to do it because after the ceremony, they give you gifts and there is a family meeting. And it was very nice. But I remember clearly that I was 10 years old and I was already like, why do all these people believe that all these weird things exist? So I did not go through a deconversion process. And I think this is mainly because we are luckily in Belgium in a quite secularist country, which means the state and church are clearly separated. And although I went to a Catholic school, I was not that much under the influence of religion. I always had the opportunity to decide by myself. But I started recently to go for more proactive conversations about atheism, because I noticed that in Belgium nowadays the beliefs, and maybe around religion, but also other beliefs such as Cindy said, pseudosciences and so on, they are gaining more and more attention, and it's the reason why I decided to defend my point of view more explicitly through, for example, this initiative of writing a course around critical thinking.
Right. Okay. Excellent. So that's what got you into doing the critical thinking. And let me just pull us back up here. One of the things about having critical thinking, especially as we discussed before, there's so many different areas where if it were applied, it would eliminate a lot of things. I really appreciate that that Miss Cindy brought that up earlier, because it, but I didn't really think about it. All I really kept applying it to whenever I was thinking about Cindy and this upcoming stream was religion. And whenever she laid down that it's going to be, actually it's the basis of a whole bunch of misthinking, of unfortunate misthinking, is the lack of critical thinking. Do you guys have any recommendations as far as, now somebody actually here, it was Saka account, suggested the cognitive reflection test. Have you heard of this? It sounds like smart people stuff. No?
Well, Chris, I can give you a bit of an idea where I think some of this misinformation or this wrong attitude comes from. Like within Christianity, in the Bible, under Matthew 12:30, they have this, according to, say, the New International Version, says, "Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters." There's a threat attached to that. It causes people to have a think in terms of very black and white, very false dilemma, and it excludes the absence of holding a view on something. So I see that kind of permeate in a lot of the thinking with a lot of religious people to say, well, if you don't believe in God, you must be against him. Or if you don't believe this, you must believe the opposite. And then unfortunately, it infiltrates society in a very bad way. So a lot of people assume a default instead of saying, okay, maybe we don't have a judgment. Like, we have freedom of thought. Why should we be stuck with this? And I'll just look up a quote from Aristotle here that I really like on this. Just take me a sec to find it here. He talks about something I think is very important to that. Let me see here. He said, "It is the mark of an enlightened mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." And that is such an important thing for people to take away. He was a great philosopher. And the only point that I would disagree with him on this is that is if somebody tries to misinterpret that as meaning it's only an enlightened mind has that ability, because I don't think being enlightened is a necessary characteristic there. But I like the message of being able to entertain a thought without accepting it. He was very clearly a free thinker in that regard, I would say.
That's a quote I may have to steal. I'm just saying, I may have to steal.
Oh, it's public domain, so it won't be theft. I actually use this quote in the book that I'm currently in the process of writing about atheism.
Gotcha. We have a question. I have a question here from Saka account. It's a good question. What assessments do you do? If I can understand the question, it's not my field. What assessments do you do? Do you employ that would be similar to the cognitive reflection test? Well, or let me just skip that part. Since you're unfamiliar with the cognitive reflection test, it doesn't.
No, I'm not. I don't know what it is.
But what assessments do you do to analyze the processes of critical thinking? Do you have like a step? Hey, start here, go here, work this. Do you have anything like that?
No, not at the moment.
Not a helpful question.
We stayed on the idea that there are tools and know-hows. So we teach the tools and the know-hows, and then we try to give examples on when each one can be used. But I don't see critical thinking as a set of rules you need to apply mathematically. In this situation, you have to use this, and in this situation, you have to use this.
But it's a process of applying logic.
Yeah, but again, the process it depends on the situation. If you're analyzing an argument, for example, the process is different from when you are verifying an information, then you probably use the scientific method. So I maybe there is, maybe I don't know enough on the topic to understand how that works, but yeah. I don't see a single process to be used.
Well, that may be part of the thing that makes it so complicated, is there wouldn't be a single process. It would depend upon, it would vary based on application. So somebody had mentioned here, and this is back to your quote, Randall. I can't help to entertain thoughts I don't accept. My brain does a lot of that. Sometimes it becomes funny remarks or wordplay. I kind of get that. But I really just wanted to, before we go on and get back to the critical thinking, I just wanted to say I really enjoy that quote. Could you read that to me again? Do you still have that up?
No,
if you don't have it, go on. I thought you had to.
No, I'll pull it up. It's fine.
In a minute. Well, you do your thing and we'll carry on. So, Miss Mélissa and Cindy, can you guys tell us, you said you met somewhere where did you meet again? Just text that to me later, Richard, if you don't mind. Or Randolph, I'm sorry. Richardson.
Go ahead, Mélissa.
So how did y'all meet?
There you go.
We met because we were working in the same company previously. I was working as a consultant in the same company, where it's a company active in the IT sector. So that's how we started our conversations during lunchtime about the critical thinking, the cognitive biases and stuff. And yeah, that's where it all started.
Over lunch.
I now left the company, but we continue this initiative.
Over lunch while breaking bread is where some of the best ideas are born, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
I put that quote into the private chat for you, Chris. I'll read it again. It is the mark of an enlightened mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Aristotle. There you go.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned somebody in the chat was saying they can't help but make a decision. It's like they think it's on autopilot, and I don't think that's. I don't actually agree with that. I think people have this expectation, and they live by those expectations, and then they get so used to it that they don't want to change.
Okay, so here's. I appreciate your question, sock account. Thank you for trying, brother. I get you. Okay, so follow-up question.
Oh, fantastic.
so follow-up question. How would you be able to audit their own critical thinking? How would a person be able to audit their own critical thinking abilities without a way to demonstrate a baseline for applying reasoning? I mean, it's like, is there almost anything you can tell us about the structure of anything related to this at all?
The structure?
With a course, so if I was to teach math, I would start with what the values mean of the numbers, and then I would probably go to addition and then subtraction. Is there any kind of form to the course in critical thinking? What do you that makes sense at all?
The approach.
Yeah.
The approach.
Yeah, I understand. The approach is...
how would somebody be able to audit their own thinking to know if they're doing critical thinking right? I believe is the question.
Yeah, I understand the question, and maybe that's something missing in the course, because we didn't approach it this way. The idea was to give tools, but how do you make sure that you're using the tool properly and you get to the right answer? I don't know. I haven't put enough thought on this at the moment. How we can teach this and how we can explicit it enough for people to be able to test it.
Right.
Mélissa?
I recommend that you look at Dr. Peter Boghossian's work. I put his name in the private chat. He's a professor of philosophy at Oregon State University who teaches critical thinking. And what's very interesting about the way he teaches philosophy is he teaches it as an intervention into people's thinking, and so that hopefully they'll come out with an interest in changing their attitudes. And most philosophy courses, as I understand it, are not really taught that way. So it's something that he catches a lot of flack for, but does it anyway. I was thinking, if I'm going to sign up for a philosophy course, his is probably the one I want to attend. It'll be the most challenging intellectually. So he's a good one to look into. He's got some books authored, and he's got some presentations. You'll find him on YouTube, and you'll probably find him to be quite valuable for developing that aspect of things. And he's reachable on Twitter and whatnot, and email. He's got all that published, so you can certainly ask him. I think he'd find what you're venturing into here to be a very interesting project, and he might even be able to send you some resources that'll even be helpful.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah,
thanks.
He's a very helpful guy, very nice fellow. Yeah.
Excellent. I have a question here for. I have a question here for Randall, my armchair move. What sorts of issues does Canadian Atheist deal with? How pervasive are the issues, and how would you compare the situation in Canada with the United States?
In the U.S., the challenges with critical thinking seem to be a lot more severe. Here in Canada,
ain't that the damn truth?
Yeah, we have. It's unfortunate. I would like to see things improve for our neighbors and for every country, because I think that's better for our global society as a whole if people can think more clearly and more critically about things, which is why I applaud what Cindy and Mélissa are working on. I think it's wonderful that when people are putting together course material or anything to teach this and promote this better way of, I think it's a better way of thinking. Better in the fact that, in the sense that it helps people to understand things more clearly and make fewer logical errors, hopefully. We got started here in Canada. We figure early on, while it hasn't yet developed into a major problem, so that we'll have an easier means of fighting against it when the need arises later on. Better to start early than later, I think. There are of course some people here who are very much dead set against critical thinking, unfortunately. So we're not without our challenges here too, and we do have some people who are have some very bigoted attitudes toward people just because they're part of a certain group. So we try to encourage people to change their attitudes, but of course you can't force people to change their attitudes.
Right.
So what we're hoping is that we'll have more of a positive influence on things. So it isn't nearly as pervasive as we see in the US. It doesn't seem to be systemic, although we did come somewhat close to that potential with our previous government, which is kind of right-wing religious conservative types. We're trying to lay the foundation for converting Canada into a Christian theocracy. And they were taking funding away from science programs, women's programs, and other things that are all very much in line with the attitudes of angry religious people who want to control and dominate. And so it's now with our current liberal government at the federal level, they've corrected most of that and undone the work that within a matter of years that the previous political party done for over a decade. So it's, we're moved back in the right direction, and I think the big challenge for them, the previous party, is our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But I think they were ready to go ahead and start making some changes there once they felt confident enough, and that there were people starting to make noises about their approach into that area. So it is unfortunately not a non-existent problem here. So and unfortunately there are other groups who are making efforts as well. We're not the only ones.
Well, I certainly appreciate what they're doing, Cindy and Mélissa, because again, critical thinking. There may be different methods by which people teach critical thinking. We all agree everybody needs to be taught critical thinking. How do we do that? How do we get that out there? And then, of course, again, to the second question, once you've taught them how to think critically, how do you get them to employ those things? The fact that we've identified that problem, and like Cindy has said earlier, that by employing critical thinking, we could eliminate or at least minimize a whole bunch of nutbaggery that goes on in the world. If only these folk, I guess this is the presumption, had these folk been taught critical thinking at a tender age, they probably wouldn't be out there, flying rockets trying to prove the earth is flat kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So I certainly do appreciate where they're going with what they're working on. That of course leads us to the where else can we find this stuff and who else is doing it. Thank you, Randolph, for the link to that other professor. So
okay, yeah.
What other goals do you have with it, Cindy? Once you guys get your project going,
the goal is to provoke discussions, because what we are doing is not. We don't want philosophy course where you sit down and hear someone talking for hours and hours and hours. We want to, the course should be 2 days long and no more, because more than that, it will be too theoretical. We don't want to be to teach the theory of critical thinking. We want to give tools that people can apply in their day-to-day lives, because we know we want the course to be accessible to everyone. And also it has to do with the company where we are going to teach it. they provide courses to unemployed and employed people likewise. And if you want to have a course interesting for people, it has to be usable also in the professional environment. So we can't rely too much on the theory of critical thinking, because that would be useless for most people, at least in the professional environment.
Right.
Yeah. It's also easier to teach critical thinking for adults in a context of professional use of the toolbox we promote, because critical thinking has its roots in economy. People started studying how our emotions and how our own biases would influence some economical decisions. So it was historically a tool conceived as a way to improve your decisions in the economic field. But nowadays, it's also a tool you can use in your professional, in a team, for instance, in order to try to find the best decisions when you have a project to lead. And our goal with the course is not to get to conflictual conversations. That's very important. We are not trying to make people believe what we believe. We just want them we want to promote the skepticism as an attitude, as a way to put your own beliefs into perspective, and to learn how to evaluate how your sources are correct or not, to promote the methodology you employ to build a conclusion, etc.
Gotcha. So what are y'all's roles? What is your role in the development of this course, Miss Mélissa?
My role was mainly focused on giving some example of the cognitive biases. So in the course, we will try to make people aware that we all are under the influence of many biases, such as the confirmation biases, the Dunning-Kruger effect, and so on. I won't go too much in the explanation of this long list of existing biases. And the important thing is to admit that we are all under the influence of these, and it's a daily exercise to try not to take decisions under the influence of all these biases. And it's impossible, because that's our human nature. We like certainties, and it's hard to admit that even with, if you can try to apply as much as possible as critical thinking, you will never have evidences that everything you believe is truth, and that's very hard to admit. But as ancient philosophers said, the most intelligent ones are the ones who know they don't know anything, actually.
Right. You know, yeah. Speaking
Socrates.
of the me and the
yeah,
me and
Socrates.
the cognitive dissonance, or not cognitive dissonance, me and Dunning-Kruger go back. We go way back. Nowadays, I just go, because it'll start with something like, oh, yeah, you know what? I need to transmit or broadcast to Discord, too. That'll be easy, And then I get it in. I'm like, oh, my God, there's all this to it, this to it, and this to it, and this to it. So I don't even do that anymore. I'm like, it's not as easy. Look, I don't even open up with that anymore. I have somebody who asked a question here. Christian Watkins in the chat asked everyone, really, well, while critical thinking is essential, the best model for essentially the best model for erasing irrational views, how would you approach dealing with religious folks who are uninterested in what's true? See, that's where I think cognitive dissonance comes in. Am I wrong? Because then they know that they just actually. It doesn't matter what the critical thinking tells them, they're going to avoid it. And that's where our cognitive dissonance is applied.
Well, people need to have a willingness to change their views too. And some people you just can't reach them if they're not willing to change their views. And it doesn't matter how often you show them that there are other possibilities. Definitely telling them they're wrong is not going to make anything any better. Usually they'll withdraw even more, but they're very often, I find a lot of those type of people are anything that has a hint of questioning their idea or destabilizing it in some way as they may see it is a problem. Right. And so they're going to become resistive right away. It's a tough one. It really is. Yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible to reach them, but I think it is a common issue.
Well, like you pointed out, Randolph, I mean, well, here, even the end of his question, how would you approach dealing with religious folk who are, and I quote, uninterested in what is true? If you're uninterested in what is true, you don't need a critical thinking.
And there is no point on having a discussion if you don't want to learn.
Right. So try to approach somebody.
I'm going to disagree with you, Chris. I think if they're uninterested, they need critical thinking more than most people.
Well, okay, I get that. Yeah. But the point is like if you're trying to convince somebody who doesn't want to be convinced, is you've heard the expression beating a dead horse.
Yeah.
You know, so you can get out the whip and start beating that horse all you want to, but the question states it literally. They're uninterested. They have no interest in what is true. And have you guys ever, I mean, I've dealt with those people. You can almost tell right from the beginning, like you said, Randolph, they have to be willing to change their position if they're given new information. And if they're not willing to change, right, if they're not open-minded or willing to change their position and they're not interested in what is true, there's no point in having that conversation. It's just a waste of your time. Walk away. Go do something productive.
You can see it when you can see it change in people's mind when if you ask them first, do you want to know the truth? Do you is being true important to you? Everyone says yes. Everyone answers yes to that question. And when you start showing them one of their core beliefs can be false, then they realize that it's not really true. They don't really care that much about reality regarding this specific belief.
Yeah.
Maybe in other areas, yes, but not on this specific belief.
Right. And then there's another extreme I've seen with certain conspiracy theorists where they will way overdo it and they will just way overthink everything, and no matter they're open to being criticized, but then they always figure out some answer to it, which is just extremely complicated and convoluted, and you just get lost listening to them sometimes. They just go way on the other end of that spectrum.
Yeah, I've seen some episodes. Are you guys familiar with the Shills? You're probably not familiar with the Shills. There's this show called The Shills. Well, Randolph is. But there's this show called The Shills, and it's a group of people. And what they'll do is they usually have a guest, on the show, but there'll be 8 or 10 of them on the show. And they will run some nutbags wooery and, some flat earth video, and they will critique the video as they watch it. They'll pause it. They'll watch a little bit of it and pause it and watch of it. And it's upon watching these guys. I mean, I don't know where they find these the internet, right? YouTube. That's where they find them. They're everywhere. But it's not when you see what these people are finding out there, and that's why I would start praying to the critical thinking gods. That's when you watch their show, you will realize how badly we need the things you're trying to teach. So you guys need to get on it. Chop chop.
The host who runs that show is a great guy. I've had some chats with him. I like him a lot. I was curious, with your course material, will you be getting into logical fallacies? I know David Worley is a friend of mine. He's recently published a book about logical fallacies, and he'd probably be quite interested in that part of it, I suspect.
Yeah. That's why I used the Hurley book. That's because we have a chapter on logic. I've been working on this in the last days, and I have to say it's hard to know how far I can go without breaking the point we're making on the course, because the basics of logic are extremely complex, and there are a lot of notions you have to understand. And not going into this, but still providing enough information to understand the basic of a syllogism and why you need a syllogism to be able to say if it's a fallacious argument or not. That's been a challenging balance to find.
Interesting. Yeah, and I guess there's different types of logic that people will apply in very often the wrong way or in the wrong scenario. And I hope you get into that as well.
No, I don't go into logic too much because I want to focus on fallacious arguments, because that's what people will identify the most easily with.
Understood. Yeah, it's good. It's a great starting point.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting near the end of our hour. I'd like to go ahead and take a moment and ask you each to go ahead and I've got your links down below to some of the things, except for you, Miss Mélissa. Your links are with Miss Cindy's. So especially, well, I guess we'll start with Randolph. Randolph, you want to close and show your stuff real quick before we say goodbye?
Sure. Yeah, I'm very happy to talk about critical thinking with you. I think your project is fascinating, and I hope it does well. And I'd like it if you let me know when it's ready. I'd be happy to send out some notices on Twitter about it to help promote it. So please keep me in mind. Yeah. I am Randolf Richardson with the Canadian Atheists. You can find out more about us at www.canadianatheists.ca. And I'm also reachable on Twitter at Randolph828. And that's Randolph spelled with an F, just like you see on the screen here. Wonderful. Thank you very much for inviting me onto this program, Chris. And it's very nice to meet both of you, Mélissa and Cindy.
Thank you for coming on again. And Mélissa, if you don't mind, tell us once again about your stuff before we go. I'm sorry, I said Mélissa. I meant Cindy.
Mélissa, go ahead.
All right, go ahead, Mélissa. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you for the invitation, and I think what you guys are doing is really great on this channel, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk a bit about our course and what we're trying to do here in Belgium. It's nice to see that initiatives to promote similar things are going on worldwide.
Well, we need critical thinking very bad.
Touch.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. From a European perspective, we definitely think that you guys Americans need more of it.
Yeah, we're in a bad way over here. So
same from Canada. We share your view in Europe. Yeah.
So thank you for that. And again, one more time, Neil again would like probably, I'm sure, to have you on his show to talk about it.
Neil's a friend of mine. He's got a fantastic show. It definitely would be good to get on there.
A lot of fun.
I highly recommend it.
And Miss Cindy, do you want to go ahead and close us out?
Yeah. So again, thank you for inviting me again. It was very nice talk, and we can continue on this topic for hours, yes. Whenever, wherever. You can find me on Ethan's channel, Your Friendly Neighborhood Atheist. Mm-hmm. We already have a few videos there, so another one is going to pop up anytime soon, which is basically a sum up of the course. So if you want to have an idea of the content of the course, then go see this video once Ethan put it up. And other than that, I like to do more debates, to be honest, because I need to test those critical thinking skills I have. I know I can do much better than what I am today, and debating is one of many interesting ways to do that. So, if anyone wants to have a friendly debate, I'm on.
Sounds like fun.
Are you familiar with the Modern Day Debate channel?
Yes.
Okay, I'll be on Wednesday, teamed up with Jim Majors. So,
nice.
Yeah, you should contact James and let him know you're interested in getting into debates. He'll probably have you on. He's really quite reachable and quite good that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
James,
okay.
I've had Jim on the show a time or two as well. So, Trina DeLuca, thank you for the $2 support for the channel. She says much love for Cindy and everything you do. Yeah, because again, critical thinking is something we desperately need here in the United States. You know, a matter of fact, if you guys could just fly planes over and drop critical thinking out in boxes, and just have it land in people's backyards, That would be wonderful because we
I
desperately.
remember this quote. I don't remember who said that, but he said, "Look at how stupid is the average person, and then realize that half of the world is stupider than this guy."
Yeah. That's true. That you know, it's a Mensa. Not a Mensa thing. So no, but yeah, the IQ thing. I've heard that before. I don't remember exactly who said it though. It was, when you look.
I wonder if it's not Ricky Gervais.
Was it? No, it was George Carlin.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, George Carlin said, you know, half of people, the average person is this smart, and that means half of them are dumber than that person. So yeah, there's okay. Thank you all for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, everybody has a wonderful weekend.
Thank you,
guys. You're welcome.
It's always such a joy to be on your program. Thank you.
Thank you. You're a lot of fun, right? You know, that's one thing about Randolph. You can just turn him loose. It's wonderful. He just goes. He knows so many things. He's got Canada wrapped up. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.